My name is Ray. This video is a follow-up to the video Introduction to Bidding in Ray's Bridge Game. In that video, we saw how the rules work by tracing them while they made a bid. In this video, we will use the editor to examine the same path through the rules that we traced. To edit the set of bidding rules, right-click on the name of the rule set in the Rule Set panel. This is the set of bidding rules that comes with the game. The editor's right panel shows available commands. The left panel shows the contents of the set of rules. Rules are divided into groups. The left panel is showing the names of the 54 main groups in this set of rules. Main groups are groups that make a bid. The writer of the rules creates main groups as they are needed and assigns their names. A group's name should provide some indication of its purpose. There are two other types of rule groups: assessments and counters. An assessment is a group of rules that decides whether some proposition concerning the hand is true or false based upon what the player knows. A counter stores numerical values. A counter can contain rules that calculate the value, or the counter can be set from a rule in an assessment. We'll see examples of both of these later. If the name of the group begins with an integer, followed by a period, the editor displays the name in bold. These numbered groups contain only comments. They do not contain any rules, although they could. In this set of rules, they are simply used as headings to separate the groups by bid number and bid roll. The plain unnumbered lines are the names of groups containing rules specific to some bidding situation. These groups contain rules that make a bid. If the rule set has numbered main groups, then unnumbered groups are indented. To edit a main group, left-click on it. Let's look at opening the bidding. This is the main group opening the bidding. There are two types of rules: comments and action rules. The main group opening the bidding does not have any comments. An action rule may simply take some action, or, more commonly, it will perform some number of true-false tests, and, if all the tests are true, then take some action. There are 4 actions that can be taken in a main group. A bid may be made. A bid can be explicit, such as one no trump, or it can be symbolic, such as one of best suit. A suit or level preference may be set. A suit variable may be set, such as best suit or temp suit 1. A level variable may be set, such as best level. The way step bids are calculated may be set. Step bids may be counted according to count only bids or count all non-pass calls. An assessment may be run. We'll see an example of this in just a couple of minutes. In the bidding rules that come with the game, the only action performed in any main group is to make a bid. This makes the main groups easier to read. The setting of suit variables is done in assessments, as we will see in a minute. A phrase in plain text is a simple true-false test. This rule tests the value of the suit variable best suit. The value would have to have been set in a separate group of rules that was previously run. You can change the information being tested. You can change the test being made. You can change the value being tested against. The information being tested on the left side of this test is a reference to a suit, the suit variable best suit. The pop-up for the left side lists 5 categories of suit reference and 9 individual suit variables. You can change the test to a different suit variable or change to a completely different suit reference. The categories of suit references are a suit by name, such as spades, a suit by nickname, such as your longest suit, a suit variable, such as best suit, a previously bid suit, such as partner's first bid suit, the suit of a step bid, such as the suit of a one-step bid. Let's change back to the category a suit variable and its default value of best suit. Note that when the category of a suit by name was selected, the left side of the comparison was set to spades. The right side was changed from undecided to best suit. Spades can't be undecided. The category a suit variable is grayed out in the selection list because best suit is a suit variable. The selection of best suit is also grayed out. All of the categories and all of the suit variables that appear on the left side of the test can also appear on the right side. There is one category that can appear only on the right side of the test, a win X, lose X suit, which we will look at in a separate presentation on play of the hand. There is one value of the suit variable that can appear only on the right side of the test, undecided. Even though it is not really a variable, this value is valid for testing the contents of a suit variable. If best suit has not been set, the default value is undecided. A phrase in italics is a reference to an assessment. As noted earlier, an assessment is a group of rules that decides whether some proposition concerning the hand is true or false based upon what the player knows. As with main groups, the writer of the rules creates assessments as they are needed and assigns their name. An assessment's name should reflect the proposition the assessment is considering. When the game uses the rules to bid for a player and comes to an if test that tests an assessment, the game runs the rules in the assessment and returns the true or false value the assessment derives. For example, when the game is running the main group, opening the bidding, and it gets to the assessment, you have a good hand with a biddable suit, it will run the assessment, and if the return value is positive, the game will bid one of best suit, whatever best suit is set to. To edit an assessment, left-click on the phrase. Let's look at you have a good hand with a biddable suit. This is the assessment you have a good hand with a biddable suit. This assessment consists of 2 rules. The first rule is a comment describing the purpose of the assessment. The second rule is an action rule that reaches a positive conclusion. In an assessment, as in a main group, an action rule may simply take some action or perform some true-false test and then take the action. There are 5 actions that can be taken in an assessment. A conclusion may be reached. A conclusion may be positive or negative. A suit or level preference may be set. This is the same as in a main group. The way step bids are calculated may be set. This is the same as in a main group. The value of a counter may be set. We will look at setting counters later. An assessment may be run. We'll see an example of this in just a minute. When a conclusion is reached, the assessment is finished, and the result is returned to the group of rules testing the assessment. If an assessment reaches the end without coming to a conclusion, the assessment is negative by default. The single action rule in this assessment ends in a positive conclusion. A rule can also end in a negative conclusion. Left-click on the conclusion to change it to negative. Obviously, that changes the entire meaning of the assessment. Change it back. The writer of the rules assigns the names of the assessments. When an assessment's conclusion is negative, the game does its best to rephrase the name in the negative. However, the game only knows about 70 verbs. If the game cannot figure out how to negate the name, it just sticks the word not in front of it. While you can phrase the name of an assessment in the negative, it causes less confusion to phrase it positively. That is, naming the assessment "you have a good hand with a biddable suit" is preferable to naming it "you do not have a good hand with a biddable suit." Now, the game accepts either way. If the name is phrased in the negative, the game will attempt to negate it by changing it to positive. But it is easier to phrase the name in a positive way. And, of course, the logic leading to conclusions when the name is phrased in the negative would be the opposite of the logic when the name is phrased in the positive. Also, notice that since an assessment returns negative by default, it is typical to follow a negative conclusion with a positive conclusion. It does not make sense for the last rule in an assessment to be a negative conclusion. An assessment can also be tested to return either a true or false value. Right-click on the assessment "you have a good hand." Select "check assessment as false." The rule is now looking for a negative result instead of positive. Change it back. The result of this assessment depends upon two other assessments. "You have a good hand" and "you have a biddable suit." Let's look at "you have a good hand." This is the assessment "you have a good hand." This assessment contains 3 rules, a comment, and 2 action rules. The first action rule is a use statement, which simply causes an assessment to be run. It does not matter whether the assessment returns true or false. The assessment is being run just to have it set some value. The second action rule is an if question ending in a positive conclusion. Let's look at set point count to high card count plus short suits. This is the assessment set point count to high card count plus short suits. A phrase in quotation marks is a reference to a counter. This assessment sets the value of the counter point count. First, point count is set to the value of another counter named high card count. Then, points are added according to the length of each suit. We can look at the counter high card count by left-clicking on it. This is the counter high card count. This counter is not set in an assessment as point count was. The instructions for setting the counter are in the counter itself. This counter checks each suit in a player's hand. There are 4 tests made on each suit. Points are added for holding the specified card in that suit. Quit high card count. We are back in the assessment set point count to high card count plus short suits. Quit set point count to high card count plus short suits. We are back in the assessment, you have a good hand. This if question tests the value of the counter point count that was just set. If the value is from 12 to 21, the assessment is true. If not, the assessment is false by default. Quit, you have a good hand. We are back in the assessment, you have a good hand with a biddable suit. Now let's look at you have a biddable suit. This is the assessment, you have a biddable suit. This assessment not only returns a positive result if a biddable suit is found, it also sets the value of the suit variable best suit to the name of the biddable suit found. Quit, you have a biddable suit. We are back in the assessment, you have a good hand with a biddable suit. If a true value is returned from both you have a good hand and you have a biddable suit, then this assessment will return true. Quit, you have a good hand with a biddable suit. We are back in the main group opening the bidding. If you have a good hand with a biddable suit, then bid one of best suit. And of course, best suit was set in the assessment, you have a biddable suit. When it is a player's turn to bid and the rules are bidding for the player, how does the game know which main group of rules to use? In this case, how does the game know when to use the group opening the bidding? Each main group has an associated assessment called a selector. If the selector is true, then the group will be used. You edit the selector by clicking on the group's name. This is the selector for the main group opening the bidding. This selector contains one rule. If the bidding has not been opened, use the group opening the bidding. Let's look at the bidding has not been opened. This is the assessment, the bidding has been opened. Notice that the name of the assessment is actually the bidding has been opened. This is a case where the name of the assessment is phrased in the positive while the test that is calling the assessment desires a negative outcome. The assessment consists of a single simple true-false test. If the answer to the question, has anyone opened the bidding, is yes, a positive conclusion is reached and the bidding has been opened. If the answer is no, the assessment is negative by default and the bidding has not been opened. Quit, the bidding has been opened. We are back in the selector for the main group opening the bidding. As you probably guessed, that one line in the bidding has been opened could have been put here and would have eliminated the need for the second assessment. That single test was put in a separate assessment so that this selector would consist only of a test of an assessment. All of the selectors contain only tests of assessments. It makes them read more like prose. One last point. There are two differences between a selector and other assessments. First, a selector should only test public information. This makes it possible during the bid review to be sure which group of rules a player used to make their particular bid. For example, another player's last bid is public information. The number of cards a player's bid implied having in a suit is also public information. The number of cards a player actually has in any suit of their hand is private information. The first two pieces of information are acceptable for testing in a selector. The third is not. Second, you cannot set any variable values in a selector. You can only test existing information. Quit the selector for opening the bidding. We are back in the main group opening the bidding. Quit opening the bidding. We are back to the list of the main groups. Let's take a look at counters. These are the counters defined for the bidding rules that come with the game. As with main groups and assessments, the writer of the rules creates and names the counters. There are two types of counters: counters set by rule and static counters. In this list, counters set by rule are in italics. There is only one counter set by rule in this set of rules: point count. Left-click to edit it. This is the counter point count. Counters set by rule are set in assessments. At the start of a player's turn to bid, the counter is set to 0. As we saw in the video Introduction to Bidding, a player performs a bid review of their partner's bid to determine their partner's implied point count. To determine the partnership's point count, the player adds their point count to partner's point count. Since the player cannot run an assessment during the bid review, the player uses the counter high card count, which has instructions in the counter and can be calculated by the player. Show where the counter is used or set. Point count is used in many main groups and assessments. It is set in 5 assessments. However, this set of rules actually only uses 2. Let's look at the assessment set point count to just high card count. This is the assessment set point count to just high card count. Hide where the assessment is used. It is one line. Show where the assessment is used. These are the situations where it is appropriate to set point count to just high card count. Quit set point count to just high card count. We are back in the counter point count. The next 3 assessments are not used in this set of rules. Let's look at set point count to high card count plus short suits. This is the assessment set point count to high card count plus short suits. Hide where the assessment is used. First, point count is set to high card count. Then points are added for different suit lengths. Show where the assessment is used. We saw it being used when we edited the assessment, "You have a good hand." Quit, "You have a good hand." Quit, set point count to high card count plus short suits. Hide where the counter is used or set. Quit the counter point count. We are back to the list of counters. Let's look at the static counter high card count. This is the static counter high card count. We saw this counter earlier. Static counters are set by special rules in a counter group. Static counters are set whenever they are used. This counter checks each suit in a player's hand. There are 4 tests made on each suit. Points are added for holding the specified card in that suit. Quit the counter high card count. We're back to the list of counters. Let's look at the static counter rule of 20. This is the static counter rule of 20. This demonstrates a different way that a counter's value can be set. Quit the counter rule of 20. We're back to the list of counters. Save rule set is highlighted in red. The game noticed that changes have been made. These were not changes to be saved. Click Quit twice to exit the editor. I hope you enjoyed this look at how Ray's Bridge Game bids a hand. Thank you for letting me show it to you. You can download the game for free from raysbridgegame.com. The game is written in Java, so you must have Java installed on your computer.